Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back again to our METUMIR migration seminar series as well. So today we have a guest speaker, Müge Dalkıran, accepted to be with us, and thank you, Müge. Müge Dalkıran Alexandridis is a PhD candidate in area studies in METU, and she's going to be today talking about how she was affected during the fieldwork in a period of uncertainty in the pandemic, Turkey-Greece tensions, and the Moria fire. So quite a lot of challenges, Müge, that you had to went through. She's completing her PhD right now, and she's writing up phase for European Studies in Middle East Technical University. She's at the same time a non-resident fellow at IWM in Vienna and a lecturer on Istanbul Kültür University since October 2020. And she is within the frame of her doctoral thesis, as I said, about the Greek asylum regime. And she has done her fieldwork in Greece, mainly in the island of Lesbos and also in Athens. And during her presence in Greece, she worked as a doctoral researcher at the Institute of International Relations in Greece. And finally, PhD student. So that's one of their characteristics that we can introduce to Müge. Thank you so much, Müge, being here. And thank you for explaining, like being part of it and sharing your experience, because I'm pretty sure there are master's students and PhD students who would be very much interested in the challenges that you had to go through even before the pandemic. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. Share the computer. Can you see it?
No.
I shared that, but yeah, it does not allow. Again, it happened the same problem. Have you received my email, Hocam?
I'll check because I'm checking now, but it says that, let's say, like, try again. I said multiple people can share. Maybe that will help you.
It directs me to the system preferences.
Wonderful. Maybe it's you, your preferences. Have you checked your preferences?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's okay. I just I wanted to share the pictures as well. That's why I wanted to do that.
It's opening. Do you have lots of pictures? It's taking some time.
6. So. Okay. Let's not be late. Let's not steal your time if you want to. So that's surprise of the online system.
I will start sharing the screen when it downloads the presentation.
Well, only for the pictures is important. Otherwise, it's just my speech plan. So to start with my research
co-host. Apparently, I can do you co-host. Sorry, Müge. Some advice came here. Co-host. Yes. Try again, please.
Okay.
If not, I have your presentation, so I can share the screen.
No, it still directs me to the. Oh, wait. Yeah. No, it still sends me to the security. Okay, I'm sorry. I
will share that, and you can tell me when to move to the next slide. Okay.
Hocam, don't bother yourself. We can just go to the picture side. It is between slide 6 and 12. For the rest is fine, I think.
Okay.
Just tell. Okay. Thank you so much for invitation, and this will be my first presentation following my field research for this one, at least. So if I just struggle a bit to forgive me from beginning. My research question for my thesis is, how does the legal pluralism in Greek asylum regime happen, and what are the implications of this of the legal pluralism. And in order to elaborate that, I'm using a framework of legal geography and legal pluralism. I'm not going to go to the detail in terms of theory, because today's topic is about my fieldwork. But my research question requires lots of document review, including reports, court decisions, and any legal documents in terms of the protection. But also it requires to go to the field to conduct interviews in different levels, mostly with lawyers, NGOs working in protection, refugee protection, Greek authorities, European agencies like EASO or UN agencies who are working in the protection area. Therefore, I started my fieldwork on January 2020. However, I moved in Greece in July 2019. So it gave me chance to build networks and to find some channels how to reach out to my interviewers, because unlike in Turkey, I have little knowledge about Greek language. It's still intermediate. I'm not a citizen, and everything is newer than Turkey. But before that, what I did for starting to my fieldwork was, first of all, it was not my first presence in Greece. In 2016, I had participated in a program with the University of Amsterdam with the anthropologists, and it was a comparative work between Istanbul and Athens. So it was my first academic visit in Greece. And after that visit, I started to ask more questions about Greece, and I started to learn about the context about Greece. So even though I went to Greece in 2019, and my thesis was quite new in that time, I had a background for legal system in Greece and general context. And during my visits, I had chance to be in Lesbos several times, Athens almost once in a month in the last 3 years, and including Idomeni. So in different sites, I could observe on the first hand how was this transition from 2015-16 before the statement and until now. So it gave me lots of opportunity to be flexible and also to manage to conduct my fieldwork even all these crazy things were happening, because after I started my fieldwork, first Greek-Turkish relations became very tenacious. Turkey opened the borders, and at the same time pandemic started, and it was really chaotic in terms of migration, in terms of refugee protection, but also as a Turkish scholar who tries to conduct fieldwork in a very small island because everyone knows each other. So this was the preparation part. What I'm trying to give here, first I will mention about the recent developments a bit, which developments were the most influential ones in terms of my research. And secondly, I will try to explain to you how these developments had impact according to the principles of fieldwork. So I will try to settle according to in that context. So especially after the elections in 2019, in July 2019, a new democracy was elected. It was it's a center-right political party which is known with the anti-migrant discourses. And even though Golden Dawn could not come to the parliament, there were lots of sympathizants and also previous parliamentarians who joined in New Democracy. So New Democracy had most prominent promises in terms of the anti-refugee discourses. And the moment they came to the power, we started to feel that in the field. First of all, they started to make operation against the squads in Athens. In Athens, there are some emptied houses, and there are activist groups taking care of the refugees, and there are some refugee squads, and they were all emptied with these operations. And in November, they prepared a new law that came into force in January 2020, which allowed this situation became so severe until the fire happened, because they changed lots of regulations to restrict their protection, but also in terms of increasing the number in the camps. Just to be more, specific on that, after the EU-Turkey statement in Greece, they put a geographical restriction for the refugees and asylum seekers who stay in the islands, in the hotspot islands, and they didn't let them to cross the mainland without permission. In order to get permission, you could be in vulnerable groups and some health issues, etc. But with this law, this was also lifted. So it was one of the reasons why we saw all these increase in numbers that reached 25,000 people in Moria camp, for example. So it was one of the main reasons why this situation became worse and worse. And when Turkey opened the borders, and during this tension between Greece and Turkey, both for opening borders, but also about the gas situation in Mediterranean, already there was pressure, especially on the islands, and it was not that much felt in urban area like in Athens. And when I went to Lesbos on January for the first time in frame of my field work, there were jets coming all the time, and this was creating a certain tension on the locals, but also for refugees who have traumas because of the wars. Especially children were quite affected by this. Each time when the jets were passing, for example, they were just screaming, shouting, and the adults were trying to calm down and singing songs together. And with this situation, when Turkey opened the borders, you also the pushbacks from the islands, from the sea, and from the Evros region. And this time, in the islands, the right-wing fascist groups, extreme right-wing fascist groups came, and they started to cut the roads that goes to Moria camp, and they did not allow anyone to go there. They did not allow refugees to go out. Our friends working in NGOs were beaten up. There were some violent acts against the UN staff. So it was quite tense, and in that time, I could not move. I could not conduct my interviews that much because there are very few Turks in the island, and as a scholar, when you start asking questions, then it takes a bit attention. And in that time, I had to stay in the closed circle, and I was only in touch with the people that I already knew from my previous field works, or somehow through studies. And after I came back to Athens, I was always in touch, but I was always suggested not to come to the island because the situation is quite tenuous, and they were my friends, local friends or my European friends who work in islands, that were very worried about my safety if I come to the island. So for several months I couldn't travel, and in that time COVID broke up. So it was this similar time, and in Greece there was a total lockdown, so anyone could move out, and we were all in the houses. So in that time, I spent my time in Athens, but always in touch with the field. When the lockdown was lifted at the end of May, I waited a bit because traveling is still not safe because of pandemic, and we don't know the situation. And after spending 1 month, I decided to go to the island, because I thought that if I don't go to the island during the summer, there is no way for me to start again to my field work. And I just talked to my friends, and I learned that the situation was better than March and April in terms of the tension. The fascist groups that I mentioned, they left, and they were not that much active anymore. So I decided to go, and at the end of June, I'm sorry, I went there and I stayed until the mid of August. And in this period, in fact, what made possible my fieldwork working was my previous contacts. And everyone was very suspicious from each other, from the outsiders. So even though I had contacts there, I was still outsider. So I felt this being outsider very deeply. And it took some weeks for me to be seen around and to be hanging out with people, to go to certain places where NGO people, right-based NGO people are going. So in the beginning, it was not a very fast field work. It was not very, every day, several meetings, but more like slowly and getting warm. For this, now I will come to the challenging setting and the principles, in fact. So already—
Whenever you want me to share the screen, I noticed that it's better you're speaking, the better that they see you. Whenever you want me to share the screen, let me know, okay?
Yes, in fact, you can show, and I'm on slide 5, hocam. So already working in challenging settings like in camp areas is difficult. And in the literature, if you check, there are some self-safety measures for the researchers and also for the for your participants. And here, what I noticed is there is especially after these tensions and the pandemic, the fire was not there yet. So I will come to that later. There was serious difference for me as a researcher to feel engaged, but also in terms of safety. In urban area, you have to know the neighborhoods better. So you should spend more time in urban area to find your way to check where the NGOs locate, and why they are locating there. For example, one of them, very famous one, is in front of the guard, the train station, because refugees had to find it immediately. It is more protection related NGOs, but more integration related NGOs are in different, more labor dominated areas. So in the beginning, in urban areas, what is more important is to do mapping in terms of refugee livelihoods, in which neighborhoods, which migrant groups are living, but also in terms of NGOs and other institutions that you need to be in contact. In a big city, you are not really engaged if you are not working or volunteering in a NGO, but you are just coming, asking questions and going. So it is less engaged. In the camp area, in the small islands, you are more engaged, because anywhere you go, especially in Lesbos, I can say, most of the people you see in the center, they are either working in NGOs, or they are working in asylum office, or they are working for European Asylum, Frontex, etc. And that's why even during your daily life, or in the evening when you are drinking your coffee, you are always in the context of this refugee related issues. So you feel more engaged. But because of the recent issues happened the attacks by the fascist groups and all these tensions make you feel less safe when you are spending your time, because they know that you are not local in that island. They know that you came late. So people ask you questions. Where are you coming from? Why you are here? And I never hid it that I was researcher. So from the beginning, everyone knew that I was researcher, my participants and everyone. So they are asking questions about your research, why you are not making research in Turkey since you have already about 4 million, but you came to Greece. So they try to understand your intentions. And there is another dimension here. Maybe if this camp was in mainland, it could be different. But because of the special conditions of island, it is more contained, and you are not really spreading all around. You just more concentrated in one certain area. And in order to be out, like to give a break, or for the NGO people as well, you need to change the village to go to the sea. And it is not really welcomed, for example, to make contacts for your research if you go to, for example, Retimno to swim, and you see some people working there in the asylum office, let's say, and to go there to talk. So for these things, it's important to show some respect for the workers in the refugee sector, because for them also it is quite contained area, and for them staying in Mytilene and spending time there is still related to work. Whereas at the weekend, for example, or during their permission days, when they are out of Mytilene and going to other places, but still close because it's island, they see it as a more detachment from their work. So as a researcher, they also ask from you to respect these boundaries between work and the permission time. So for challenging settings, I will share some pictures with you from the island, from the camp area. Hocam, we can go. So this is the olive groves. This is not official camp area. Official camp area was out of the quota because it was really overcrowded. Therefore, people were not able to find places within the official area, and around the official area there is an olive grove. They also call it a jungle, and they started to build tents and junk houses in these olive groves. And it became, when I was there, it was bigger than the official camp area. And in this place there are families staying, children staying, even vulnerable groups staying. Normally in the beginning it was not the issue. In the official camp, Hocam, you can show the other pictures as well if you want to. For example, this is the toilet area for all the people just out of the olive grove, and it is also again pictures from the olive grove. These are before the fire, and this is the fire, and all this area was burned, and all these ones from the fire. One of my participants sent this, and after the fire, people had to stay on the roads. So, for example, in the beginning, in the camp area, there are sections: A section, B section, C section for the vulnerable groups. Some of them are single mother with the little children, and single father, and families with little children, and unaccompanied children. But because there was no space anymore, for example, in July, when I was talking with unaccompanied a guardian for unaccompanied children, he told me that now there is no section anymore. Yes, there are sections in theory, but now all of them are full, so they sleep basically wherever they find place. So this situation, it was really heavy situation. When I was going to the camp in this olive groves, after coming back, you feel really heavy, and you feel very desperate. because you try to talk to people, but also not to disturb them. It is a very difficult balance. When you tell them that you are doing something legal, then they think that you may help them legally, but I'm not a lawyer, I'm not there for that. So arranging this balance was quite difficult in these times, because there were lots of people in line waiting for asylum application to be sent to the mainland. There were lots of either traumatized people, sick, or so many children as well, very little children. So once you try to speak with them, they also either wait from you that you can help in next things, or some of them who have spent there quite long time, they were really bored to talk with the journalists and researchers, so they were refusing to talk with you as well. It was same for the NGO workers too, because Moria was always very popular, so anyone comes to the islands try to speak to you about the same things, and you are telling over and over again the same issues. So at some point you see this wall that they don't want to share, or they don't want to share too many things. So now I want to come to the do not harm principle. It is it's the golden rule in terms of the field work with the forced migrants, and I think any vulnerable groups especially. But in this time it became even more challenging, because it was not only about keeping the data anonymous, or it was not only about personal life or personal data, but there were some other dimensions in this period. One of them was about physical safety, because of the pandemic. Before, for example, I was able to invite people in a cafe, in a restaurant, in a closed space where it was silent, that I can talk and record in a better way. Because of pandemic, I was not able to anymore invite people in a closed spaces, but we always had to meet outside with a physical distance, which makes problems in terms of talking. Also, you are with the masks and you are recording with all these voices, if they allow you to record. So in addition to this personal data situation, the health issue also became very important, because you know that in the island especially, if you carry anything and if you transmit to the person you speak, they are going to the camp, they are in the camp, and you can just transmit so many people. That's why it was very important to be sure that you are isolated from other people. So I didn't have any social life basically when I was there. And you are being very careful in terms of arranging the distance for your own safety, but mostly you are thinking at that point, if I give something to these people, they will take it to the camp area and it will be a disaster. Another issue, it was about my identity, because I was Turkish, and time to time, especially with the taxi drivers, I was feeling this interrogation type of questions. Some people, especially among the NGOs based on like refugee established NGOs, I can say, or Greek people working for the authorities, despite the fact that they want to talk with you, they were hesitant to be seen with me, because after spending some time there, and I told you that everyone knew that I was a researcher, once a person is seen with me, it was like already saying that they are talking to me. So some of them didn't want to be seen with me. They still participated, but that gave me that forced me to find alternative places to meet. Instead of meeting in the centers, choosing little villages a bit outside of the Mytilene, or not very popular areas, let's say, just to have a coffee. Or sometimes we had to find solution that I couldn't record anything, and they didn't want me to keep notes because it is like interviewing from outside in terms of perception. That's why I was just listening, and the moment I was going back home, I was just typing. There were these kinds of situations as well. And another issue was normally I'm keeping a field journal, but because I was feeling this pressure being Turkish there, I started to code also on my journal and on my interview paper. So in case that someone stops me, or in case that my notebook is stolen, all these things can happen. It could give some protection for the interviewers in order not to be reachable. Before, for example, in Athens, I could write the name, for example, it wouldn't be a problem, but in the island especially, I felt that I had to be really careful in putting that, in not putting danger these people. For example, now I will come to the last point, hocam, interaction with participants. Here, there are three different issues important. One is building trust, the other one is about respect, and the third one is a question of positionality. The first one, building trust, before, it is different than before my previous experiences, because in terms of starting conversations, in Turkey it is different, but in Greece especially, people are very, friendly. They try to help you. They are quite critical in relation to state and EU policies. So they were not very hesitant before. But in my last 6 months, especially, I felt this after the new democracy government and making oppression on the NGOs working in the camp. Now there's also new law that forbids NGO workers to speak about the camp conditions with the confidentiality criteria. People were really hesitant to talk. They were not feeling really safe, and they were not feeling safe to talk with me because I'm coming from Turkey as well. So I just heard many times that they were cross-checking who am I and why I'm there, through my networks, through my previous interviews, through the people that I was hanging out in the island. And because I'm working right-based, and because of my educational background in human rights law and my professional experience in Amnesty International, that could help me to build trust with these participants. And secondly, again, this establishing network, I said it was very useful for me to build trust. And the third one is, for the first time in my life, in my academic life, my almost each interview started with political questions. It was different than like learning what I'm doing in general or in a university, but it was specifically asking what is my political stance, and how I am approaching to this, and like to testing. And I try to give answers, but not to interfere my area that much. So it was a bit tricky for balancing. And for respect, I already told you about this, respecting the boundaries to the workers, NGO workers outside the area and in their settings. And it is similar, maybe even more important in the refugee camp when you go in the olive groves, because you are in fact walking in the area where people are living. And it's not really welcome that you are just taking a huge photo machine and taking pictures and going there, going to the tent, asking questions. So you should be more reluctant when you are there. And sometimes people already come to you, or you are just talking a volunteer, then you meet with another person. And you should be more like respectful and more aware that you are walking maybe in between their homes and their living spaces, and no one owes you to explain anything or share their story. My topic was not about their life story, so I was not asking personal questions, which was advantageous for me, because it is more difficult to ask personal questions to people about their journey. But again, they don't have to tell you anything, and they are just doing this to, you know, to participate or to help you. So you should not push anyone to tell more or to dig anything, just to like having conversation. And if they don't want to open up new issues, you should stop there. I had it, for example, with an LGBTI NGO worker, and he or she told me very specifically that, okay, I respect what you are doing and we can chat until the morning, but we cannot have formal interview because we had very bad experiences in the previous times, and we just want to produce our own research from our own community. And at that point, there is no point to force them, even though you become very good contacts or friends even. So you should know where to stop. And the last part is about the positionality. And I already mentioned about the identity there. Before, if I was making this speech last year, I would more talking about being a young woman in the field, because I also feel this gender issue quite deeply, but we can explore if there is any question about it in terms of power relations or setting the connection during the interview. But this time, different from my previous experiences, my national identity was the most prominent issue during my fieldwork. And to sum up, I'm sorry that it took a bit long, but it was a long conversation, long process. What I have learned from this experience, I already knew that you need to be flexible when you are in the field, because nothing goes as you planned before. And it is the most adventurous part of the field work. But after having all these issues at the same time in 6 months, it's shown that I should be really flexible, because I was planning to finish my interviews by April. I could not finish. It didn't happen. I couldn't even go to the field. And sometimes you call someone, you arrange your interview, at the last minute they can cancel on you, or you think that you will talk to one person and it will be more private conversation. Suddenly you find yourself in a huge group talking at the same time. So you shouldn't just, you know, panic when you think that go beyond your hands or not planned, but try to find your way with these existing circumstances. And secondly, it made me reflect on more about my research strengths and limitations. In terms of strengths, I just noticed that it was really helpful for me to know very deeply the context in Greece. In this way, I didn't waste my time to ask very generic questions to people, but I could just be more pointy. And it also gave confidence to these people that they are not spending some time with a junior scholar who doesn't know anything, but they could be also more detailed, or sharing more technical issues, and sharing more deeper experiences in their jobs and in their situations. And last thing about the strengthening, coming from Turkey, yes, it was a bit disadvantages in this situation, but it was also my strength, because here in Turkey we kind of have habit that in a pressured way, in a bit oppressed way, how to conduct research, how to protect our interviewees, and how to give this confidence. If I was coming from a more maybe liberal European country, it would be different in that sense. But here we learn already being cautious while we are speaking about anything. So it really helped me when I was speaking or asking questions in Greece in this situation about the limitations. All this happening, they were the limitations. I'm not going to dig more and more. But in terms of having more limited access to anywhere, and for the time frame and self-protection, security-related issues, they were the main limitations. And the last thing about my research and what I learned from this is about the healing process after coming back from the field work. Before also, I felt overwhelmed when I came back from Idomeni. It was quite heavy experience, but this time, because I had also this personal safety issues, and this time I was really engaged with the conditions going on in that time. It was a bit traumatizing experience as well. And when I came back to home, in the beginning, I was thinking that I could just make transcripts and I can immediately start writing about my fieldwork experience, but it did not happen in that way. In 3 weeks, I couldn't do anything, literally anything. And then I just tried to adapt this, like accept this reality that I cannot do anything and I shouldn't worry about it, because it's about time to digest what I have experienced in these conditions. And at that moment, Moria fire also happened, and all these people that I was speaking, I was drinking tea with, and who were inviting in their tents, they lost their home. And yeah, so it was difficult to process. And thank you for listening, and I'm sorry for this emotional moment, but it was a bit, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the experience. Thank you for us giving the insight what is happening. Yeah, virtual clapping first. If you were here, the atmosphere would be more like engaged, and apologies for that, but that's the virtual reality. It's totally fine to be emotional. I think it's one of the challenges of working on forced migration, that I noticed that we don't train you guys on this, right? We don't necessarily get the training while you're doing the research, both master's research and PhD research. Like we want to send you like, go and do your, fieldwork interviews, but basically you don't necessarily get very specific training, how to engage, how to not engage. I mean, we have the research methods, but it doesn't necessarily go much more in detail. And especially with sociological research, anthropological research, ethnographic research, you need like special training skills, because it's very, very difficult. It's a very challenging job to interact with people who are in really difficult circumstances, both for you and both for the other side as well. And I'm very glad that you made this presentation, especially for the postgraduate students, who might go through the same route or similar route in certain ways. That's why I was always refrained. I took forced migration research methods classes in my postgraduate studies in Oxford in the Refugee Studies Center. And I noticed that it is very, very challenging, and it's not up to me. It's not up for me, I would say that. So I always looked for the more distant kind of approach in terms of research, and I did the elite interviews. So it's a matter of choice, but I think what you're doing is very valuable, and it's quite an important insight from a Turkish point of view too, because we don't know necessarily what's happening, but from a European or global point of view too, because we don't necessarily know the insight what's happening. I'm happy that you share the photos as well, because it was quite, one picture explained everything, right, sometimes, and it was quite good. So thank you so much. It is very challenging, and I'm happy to see that you have followed the ethical rules in terms of do not harm kind of principle, being honest, not being tricky in terms of you're doing research. I was very recently evaluating some applications in terms of proposals, and it's unbelievable how people can think it's okay to go and just talk to refugees and there are no ethical issues concerned, and that they don't necessarily see that they're giving harm to the other person. They're considering a harm to themselves, but when we are doing research, we have to be responsible in terms of not giving harm to the person that you're interviewing. It was interesting because they say that I can go and make an interview with the state officials and I don't see what's the point if they give some political insight. And you have to explain them, like in certain countries, if you're making, if you're getting sensitive personal information from the interview, and if you publish it, and if you don't anonymously publish it, it may harm the person, even if that person is a diplomat, or if that person is like an ambassador even, or a politician, an MP, because they're expressing sensitive views and you're publishing it without anonymizing it. It can be critical. Even when you anonymize it, if you're mentioning that the ambassador of Turkey, let's say in Iraq, I mean, it doesn't matter if you publish the name or not, because it's pretty obvious who you're talking about, right? So one has to be very responsible as a researcher, and it has to be important, especially when you're making interviews with vulnerable people like refugees. You have to make sure that you're not stigmatizing these people, or you don't increase the stigmatization of those people in that situation. And there might be a traumatic experience for them too when they're sharing the experience with you again. If they go through the same story again, like imagine that you're telling some traumatic story over and over again. It can be very problematic for yourself too, because you're going back again. The wound is done again, being scratched in a way, and you're experiencing it again. And you can also stigmatize people talking to you, as you explained quite well. Then they're going to be labeled as the traitor, or it's like this and that on both sides, from the Greek police side and also from their own community side as well. So I think you expressed those issues quite well, and it was important. And also, that's one issue about forced migration studies that you have to keep in mind if you're doing fieldwork research. Remember that these people are being interviewed like various times. And as you have pointed out, they might be thinking that something is going to come out of this for their benefit. So you have to be open and clear about it. And there should be some fair benefit sharing mechanisms. So they have to get something out of this research too. You're getting your research done, but what do they get? Why should they collaborate apart from the story that's being heard? That's not enough. And in certain countries, especially, Greece is not one of those countries. It's lower income or middle income countries. But imagine that you're doing research in some lower income countries, then you have to create benefit sharing arrangements that your research should benefit that society too. So it's not going to be the white hand doing the research and coming back and getting whatever and then publishing, and what is going to happen to the other people who are collaborating with you. So you have to keep this issue in mind as well in terms of ethical research when you're doing the ethical research done. And you cannot imagine how ignorant people could be, even from these amazing institutions like Oxford and Harvard and Yale, and it can be quite interesting. Anyway, so thank you, Müge. And also thank you. It was like a research methods class too, for those of you who are going to be writing your theses. I hope you followed it carefully, and if you didn't, that's been recorded, so we can see it again. So let's go to the questions. There has been some questions. Menekşe was here and she had to leave, but she sent 10,000 questions. But I'm not going to start from her. The reason is that I might come back. She had to do something and she's coming back. She texted me. So let's start with Tuğber's question. Would you like to compare conditions of refugees and asylum seekers or infrastructure in Greek camps with the Turkish ones? It didn't look, I mean, I think the story is pretty evident in certain, from the story, but if you can shortly answer. And Hazal was asking, have you visited Karatepe camp in Lesvos? And we will continue with the other questions, but there's two questions first. And then I have a question for Erkan. Seeing the conditions after Müge answers, seeing the conditions in Greece, it felt like instead of building up refugee camps in Syria, I think we should build up refugee camps in Greece. I think they are the ones who need it. I'm not trying to be sarcastic here. I'm like being totally honest. Why it is not done? Like it looks horrendous, and it's a new member state. Okay, I'm leaving the question there after Müge answers.
I will start with your question, why. It is a very clear policy of deterrence. It's whenever I speak with anyone in the island, anywhere, working about refugee issue, including more European level people, they were all saying that if there are good conditions in Greece, everyone will come.
Pull factor. Yeah, but that's a general attitude, but still,
Yeah.
like there should be some minimum
latest
standard. It's not acceptable. Like,
of course,
I don't know. There was similar kind of issue. Sorry, go ahead.
For the latest one, especially, I will give a specific example for it, the new one after the fire, because it's, I think, more scandalous. Okay, I will start with the comparison, but I will not only do it in terms of the camps. There are different periods in Greece, different from Turkey. When I visited for the first time Lesbos, it was 2015 when the crossings were happening. In Turkey, from the beginning, state was more involved in the process. So in terms of establishment of the camps and for any type of service, state has been the main actor in Turkey. But in Greece, it was not the always case, especially in 2015 and 16, half of 16. You couldn't see the presence of state that much, like in Turkey. Mostly the activist groups, underroot organizations, NGOs were more involved in the process, including the research and rescue, search and rescue operations, and then welcoming people in the island with the warm clothes and everything, giving them food, assistance, everything. And then when the camp established, it was in the beginning for 3,000 people in Moria. And still all these services were held by the activist groups and NGOs. And I will also connect with Menekşe's question here. International organizations, international NGOs were very active in this period. But in last 2-3 years, like 2018, I would say, they made more nationalizations in terms of the NGOs, and because of the fundings, mostly they wanted to give these fundings coming from Europe to the Greek NGOs to keep the money inside instead of spending to the international staff working in INGOs. So INGOs like Save the Children and all these well-knowns started to leave Greece, and national, more Greek NGOs became more active, like METUMIR. METUMIR is the biggest one. Now my brain stopped. So anyway, these Greek NGOs became more prominent, but also state increased its presence in terms of the service provided in Moria and in other camps. So after 2018, it started to become more different. Related to the conditions, if I compare, I think it is already very obvious. There is no container camp in Greece, in these islands. I think there is one in Thessaloniki, but I didn't visit there. They are like very badly established, very poor quality of tents. It does not cover against the rain, against the snow. People have to put fire in order to get warm. That's why many times fire happened, but in the recent one, the whole camp was burned. But before also there were danger. People are putting their wires, so it creates another danger. So in terms of the conditions in the camps, it's not comparable. But in terms of civil society and the engagement of the active citizens, I find Greece more active and more in solidarity with, despite the extreme right-wing groups. They are more minority, I would say, but in terms of solidarity, especially for local people, etc., from the beginning they were very active to help and being in solidarity with. And there was another question. Karatepe is very protected. It is not allowed to get inside without a special permission. I was outside the camp and I could talk with people who work in Karatepe in different levels, but I didn't visit inside because mostly in Karatepe it is fewer. It's 2,000 now, or 3,000 maybe people are living. Families with little children are staying there. So from the beginning, they try to separate in that sense. In very beginning of Karatepe, only Syrian families were staying, but now there are fewer Syrians. So they consider Karatepe is more like a vulnerable area for the families with children. So it's more restricted to get inside.
Okay. And is there anything you want to add, Erkan, or? I mean, I think it's been answered by Müge, more or less, but is there anything else you would like to add?
Actually, Greece is a member of European Union. For this reason, I know that they are taking financial and equipment support from other European Union countries. For this reason, actually, it's interesting to see this picture. I think this is irregular camp. This is not a regular camp. For this reason, perhaps understandable. But I think sociologically, perhaps their culture, their religion, their historical position is the reason. I don't know, but it's interesting actually to see this picture.
Okay. Shall we go on to other questions? Because there are many questions. Okay. I think Laura's question was next. I haven't seen many conversations in academia about how to best manage heavy emotional component. First, on behalf of your interviews and then yourself, what resources have you found helpful on the academic side and on the researcher's sides, on the emotional, I think, side of things, and how to handle the situation, basically?
Thank you so much for this question. I find it very important, and recently we have been talking a lot with other researcher friends, our colleagues, about this. First of all, I think rather than the educational background here, my experience in Amnesty International was very helpful personally, because I did my internship in 2011 when Syrian war started, and I was translating lots of reports related to torture, and I was working in a project about the transsexual people, and I was also translating the European Court of Human Rights decisions, which involve in many detailed cases. So when I was there, our colleagues who have more experience in this was helping me to cope with it and to give some readings and to share their experiences. So for me, it was more about my professional background, because I'm also graduated from international relations, and international relations, we don't even see anything related to fieldwork. So it was not about that educational background. And during my master's also in human rights law, we have Lami Bertan Tokuzlu in Bilgi University, who worked for UNHCR. So he was also helping. He was helping more like conducting interviews also in name of, for example, UNHCR. So he was kind of giving that kind of training. But the rest was by myself. I started to read lots of articles when I decided to go to the field, especially the studies related to LGBTI people and intersectionality, and feminist studies working with the violence against women or violence against children. They have quite large literature about the positionality of researchers and about secondary trauma. So I benefited from these secondary resources and talking lots of with researchers, friends coming from anthropological background. In 2016, I involved in a project with anthropologists, as I said, and I was the only person who came from IR, I guess, in that time. So I was more passive in that sense. It was my first field, and I, with their help, and still I'm sharing with them when something happens or when I have concerns. But I think here we should, especially in Turkey, what's missing is, yes, we are not talking enough in the universities, and maybe it could be nice to have a kind of support group among the researchers, and especially for the new starters, since now we are dealing lots of studies in Turkey related to migration and refugees. So there are many things more to be done. I want to reply something very short to Erkan. It's not about cultural or religion. I want to put something like question mark there, but it's all political, of course, I from my point of view, and especially after the fire in Moria. And before that, New Democracy wants to build a closed camp in the islands to put all these people in the closed camps, and both local people, refugees and NGOs are against it. And after Moria burned, they put this camp area on a hill where from the beginning, like, it was not possible. It was obvious that it was not possible. And it's a former military area. So imagine people moved in there and they still find the bullets or military materials inside the area. And I think they wanted to force Europe, because the EU also does not want to establish these closed camps. They don't want to fund it. They wanted to force everyone to show that these tent camps do not work. So it's better to move people in the closed camps. So I think, especially in this current situation, that's what they are forcing for. And that's one of the reasons, I think.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you raising up that issue, like traumatizing again the refugee through going through. If somebody's running away from war, you should not be putting them into a situation that will remind them more, right? I remember, I don't know which Turkish institution was that. They I don't have it here, and it's not my office. I think it is in my ODTÜ office, that there is a booklet that you open up. Oh, it's like we are encouraging refugees to get, more, I don't know, vocational training. And there's these ladies who are sewing military outfits. Mm-hmm. And I remember showing it to in an academic setting, and there was this outrage, and like, the refugees are sewing military outfits. And I had to come back to Turkey and I tried to say, like, we should not be doing it. And even if you're doing it, we should not be publishing pictures of this. It's not good advertisement. So yeah, we have to be ethically a bit more concerned. I agree with you. So we have to be very quick now. There is so many questions. Once, how the Greek government reacted, from Oz asked the question, how the Greek government reacted to fire in Moria camp, and how do you think the international reaction, especially the EU? And then maybe we can continue with that question. And Ahmet's question is also interesting. What are the dreams of these people in the camp? Are they planning to get back to the normal life someday in Syria, or having a lifeline in Europe? Being in Greece, I'm assuming they had the intention to leave and not go back to Syria, but let's see your fieldwork experience.
Okay, starting from the reaction of government, it was very harsh. It was because they they thought that, and they claimed that the fire was intentional. It was intentionally done by the camp residents with the support of NGOs, and even there were so many conspiracy theories that the Turkish agents came and they put the fire in Moria in order to put Greece in a difficult situation. So there were lots of conspiracy theories in relation with the fire. They were just saying that we are hosting them, we are providing everything to them, and they are just burning and they put in danger all island. So that was the reaction of the government. It was very hard, and that's one of the reasons why they did not intervene immediately. They let people sleep on the road for a week almost, and when they built the new place, imagine like 25,000 people were living in the camp, and then they started to accept some of them, send some of them, and it became like 15,000 when the fire happened. And they built a new camp only for 5,000 people. So what are you going to do this extra 10,000 people? Where they are going to stay? They are already there. So from the beginning, they just try to make them more like responsible what they did, and to make them regretful for that. But it was criticized a lot in Greece as well, this post, like, okay, government does that, but it gets reaction by people. But of course, it was very challenging for the local people as well, because suddenly their island is also burning. So it was not an easy time for anyone.
And how about the dreams? Are they planning to go back to?
Yes, about dreams, most of them want to go to Germany. There's a dream of Germany. There has been a dream of Germany for a very long time. Especially in 2015, 16, I was seeing this a lot. Anyone I was talking with, they were having this utopia about Germany. They will go to Germany and their life will be saved. There are several reasons for it, especially now still why these people are coming. And despite these conditions, first of all, the people who are resettled in the EU countries, like they call it Europe, even if they are in Greece, their Europe is not Greece. Their Europe is like northern countries and Germany, especially. When people who are resettled there, they are calling them and they don't share their bad experiences, because after all these struggles, they want to share the good experiences, and that's why people who are coming there, they think that once they go there, everything will be very easy. And secondly, many of them had really difficult time in Turkey. And I'm not limiting this with Syrians, so I'm not talking about Syrians especially the ones who should be under international protection, but who are not. There are lots of cases they suffered a lot during their stay in Turkey. And when I was talking with the authority in Greek asylum system, he or she, I don't want to give the gender, asked me what's happening in Turkey, and all these people are having really serious claims, especially related to torture and bad experiences. And one thing I want to share, I met an Afghan woman around 30s, like mid of 30s. She had 4 children, and I met her 2016 in that time. And I asked, because she went with the plastic boat, and I said, how could you dare, like with 4 little kids? And it wasn't dangerous, or like, weren't you scared? And she told me that they were already dead in Turkey, and if they could cross the sea, they could be alive. So once these people have this feeling, you cannot stop them, and they see that's the only way. Some of them, they just go with better life purposes, and some of them, in fact, come back to Turkey again. There are also these cases. It's a mixed group. I cannot generalize all of them think in the same way. There are very different stories, but many of them had very difficult situation in Turkey, and that's why they were also a bit reluctant to tell their stories with me about Turkey, because they couldn't be sure who I am.
Turkish, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict of interest there. Yeah. There is a question. I think we should take this like the final question. Menekşe sent it, I think, by mistake privately to me. So I don't think you can see. The question is there any change in the engagement of international NGOs for the situation of the refugee camp in Mytilene? In earlier periods, there was a huge interest from the civil society, but I cannot see similar interest in recent periods to draw attention to the human interest problems in the island, and also the child abuse cases in the camps. And maybe I will add that, like, usually these are the circumstances in the islands, right? Islands are not, like, you have to think about an island as a place where the infrastructure is not as well established as the mainland. I know that this is not an excuse, but that's the reality. It was the same case when I was writing a report about the conditions in the Mediterranean, and the situation in Malta. Malta is one of the most advanced countries. It's a small island, but economically speaking, it's quite well off. But the conditions were terrible because the main reason why it was that they don't want to have the pool factor. So basically, they had showers where men and women had to shower together, and there were no curtains. And can you imagine, in any culture, it's unacceptable, right? And it's nothing to do with ethnicity. It has nothing to do with, religion, being religious or not, being Christian or Muslim. Like, you would like to have showers in a private environment. But that was the situation in Malta, and the Council of Europe was quite pissed off with these circumstances, and they were warning these countries, and their excuse was that, we don't have the infrastructure because it's an island. They don't have the infrastructure. But the main reason, as you mentioned, was political, because they don't want to set up camps. The camps will be there forever. And camps will encourage more pull factor in certain ways. If the circumstances are better, then more people will like to come and stay. As Arkan was explaining, like, why they're not leaving, my super ignorant question, because I would assume that you would be no matter what the circumstances are. We have an expression in Turkish, değil mi? Bülbülü altın kafese koymuşlar, yine de vatanım demiş. We have an expression in Turkish for this. No matter what the conditions are, I wouldn't like to be in a camp or whatever you call them, guest center, accommodation center, whatever you call them. It's a confined environment. So that's why basically for many, many years, UNHCR was praising Turkey not to have camps, because the refugees were not living in confined environments. Anyways, I talked a little bit more, but the question was about the Mytilene camp.
About the NGOs, I gave a background about this involvement in the beginning and now. As I said, I don't think that it is about the loss of interest. There are still many volunteers coming from all over Europe, working in the camps with the NGOs, and there are even lists or waiting lists for that. But the main reason, I think, in Greece, as I said, they changed some regulations about the NGOs working in this refugee sector, especially with the camps, and NGOs left the islands. For example, my partner was working in Save the Children in that time in 2017, and all of the operations were ended by the beginning of 2018, and it was same for the other NGOs. There are still like Danish Refugee Council, but they don't have the very big operations. Mostly the Greek NGOs are conducting, and they are trying to hire also Greek people, national staff. It's also related to economic situation in Greece, of course, in order to increase the employment in that sense. So it is more than about the loss of interest of NGOs, but it is more about the Greek context related to mostly economics and also controlling the camps and this refugee situation with their own people rather than having international people. There's also this kind of lack of trust. But I cannot say that they lost, especially for the Europeans, they lost the interest, especially for young people. You see many people coming to the island, volunteering in different positions, from picking up the garbage to the legal aid. I mean, in various positions, there are many people still coming. And did I miss any question?
No, you didn't. The last question by Merve is nothing to do with you, about Frit, which is about Turkey, and it's a homework for next week. Okay. Everybody has to, it's nothing to do with Greece here. You have to Google Frit, and what is it about? What is the link between Turkey and the EU and Frit, F-R-I-T. That's the homework for next week. Google and learn about it, and we can discuss it next week. So Merve, I'm giving you the homework. Not you personally, the entire class has the homework now. What is it, Frit? Arkan mentioned it in his presentation. And by now you haven't heard of Frit, you have an issue being a Turkish citizen. It is quite drastic. So that's going to be the question for next week. Thank you so much, Müge. Thank you for taking time, preparing the presentation, coming and sharing your story with you, your fieldwork experience, the background of what was happening, giving us the insight of what happens in Greece, or what happened in Greece and what is happening in Greece. And also being very honest about it, very open about it. And we appreciate very much for all this information. Thank you so much. And yeah, being the guest speaker, we enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you for I think I'm applauding now.
For the invitation.
Class. And Arkan too. So we saw what was happening on the border. we looked from Syria to Greece, like what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Turkey, and what's happening in Greece. So both insights of two borders. And one thing, I don't know if I mentioned it in the beginning of the class, in 2010, I applied a Marie Curie Fellowship to the European Union, saying that I would like to, it was called EU Across. So I wanted to research, because I crossed the border to Syria in 2009. I thought that this is an amazing opportunity to do research. So I wanted to look at the border policies between Turkey and Syria, and Greece and Turkey. So it's going to be a comparative research. And I was going to look at the irregular migrants coming through Syria to Turkey to Greece. The EU rejected my application, saying that it is very irrelevant. The topic is very irrelevant and it has no scientific value, basically. And 2011 onwards, we have seen what happened. Yep, Aslan, how the tables turn. So they could have had some research going on if they founded me. So I think the universe kind of punished them. So as you can see, things can change very quickly. That's what I'm trying to say. And it is important that we know what's going on beyond the border, because it has, in international relations, we know that issues like migration do not, respect boundaries or borders. It's a transboundary issue. So we have to know that, we have to acknowledge that. And thank you so much for both of you today, letting us know that a bit more in detail. Thank you. And I'm going to be stopping. Stop